Hey guys, so I played at the 401 skirmish, got top 8 with our favorite leader. We played Ahri. Ahri is one of my favorite leaders. I really like it because it kind of feels like a deck that kind of has a lot of options for everything. Not every single time is that good for a deck. Like sometimes you want to play a deck that's better at some things than others. But I don't know, I just wanted to play my leader. It felt really good to play a leader that had most of the tools that you need to win. Obviously, we played our leader, for those who don't know, -1 when you attack one of my battlefields that I'm controlling. A lot of people didn't know that on the weekend. A lot of people just kind of pushed their guys and then got -1, and then they asked me if it's good, and I say, that's good. Would you like to crash? So make sure you read your leaders, guys.
That's me, I was that guy.
For our champion unit, we've got Blue Ahri. This one on attack and defense gives -2. It's basically just leader on offense and defense. This card's really good. Only playing one copy of it in the main. You only really want to drop this once, and you don't want to have to use recall or anything to put it back into your hand. So it's kind of situational, but it's also one of your best units outside of Watcher and your top end. That helps you on taking boards back, because this deck is very dedicated to holding the board. So you don't want to have to take the board back, but if you do, then this card is an option for it. I played Green Ahri in my side deck.
But since then it's changed?
It has changed since then. I'll talk a little bit about it when I get to it in the side deck, about the theory as to why we played it. But as far as I'm concerned, for the near future, it's going to be a different card in that slot. Quickly, six green, 6 blue. Don't think I have to talk too much about it. There's a ratio that could change in there somewhere, but I didn't find it the night before the tournament, so I just went with 6-6. Didn't really come up. I'll go into the battlefields very quickly. Trifarian Warcamp is usually the one that I bring in game 1. A lot of people really like to bring in Dreaming Tree. I don't know, I feel like Annie a lot of the time is playing Dreaming Tree early, and like Kaisa and like other decks are potentially saving Dreaming Tree for the late game. So especially against Annie, I really don't want to run into Annie like game 1 into this battlefield, so I play this. And this battlefield is also really good into Kaisa. Being able to push this unit up to 4 and just kind of throw off the math on like a lot of your cards, especially with a Cathian Rain, for like requiring 2 pings for some guys instead of 3. Is really good, along with Falling Star. Falling Star is just one of the hardest cards to play around in this deck, because Falling Star just does really good damage into all the units that you're trying to play around. And even if you're on Trifarian Warcamp, it was 2 mana, they -2, they killed your most important unit and probably played like a Noxus Hopeful or set up their board to break it after. So it's not always the case where this card is good, but Trifarian Warcamp was really good at throwing off the math, doubling up on the battlefield hold game 1. Very good against Yi when you're game 1 as well too, and that's the deck I wanted to play towards for. So Grove on going first, and Dreaming Tree when going second. Dreaming Tree, God makes a lot of sense. I don't think I have to explain that one. This one, your deck is dedicated to drawing cards. When you go first, this card lets you draw a card when you hold, so it basically speaks for itself. Dreaming Tree could be a going first battlefield. I'm playing it going second because a lot of the time with this deck, if you end up playing a battlefield that is really good for going second, like fortified position, and you end up losing that battlefield, the chances of you taking that battlefield are usually 0. There's probably no way that you're taking back like fortified position or like anything through like interaction. So you really want to play a neutral battlefield that doesn't really allow for a lot of shenanigans for when you lose it. Dreaming Tree is just the best candidate for that, because like half of your deck can be either is dedicating to targeting your own guy, or can target your own guy to trigger it, like just Stupefy, as well as not being so negative when you lose it, because you don't want it to be the end of the world when you're going into counter clearing. All right, so we'll get into our 2-cost units. Nothing too crazy. Start with the 3 Raven Blooms, 3 Stalwart Poros, and 2 Clockwork Keepers. This 6 over here are like pretty standard. The only one that could change is potentially maybe the Clockwork Keeper. I wanted to play this over Watchful Sentry because I didn't want to play a unit that felt really bad outside of Trifarian Warcamp, as well as needing to sack itself, because it kind of feels a little counterintuitive when you're playing a unit in a deck that wants to hold when that unit is kind of there to just trade and die. So I wanted to play Clockwork Keeper so that I had a better unit on that front. Next, we've got 3 Lecturing Yordle. This one was a little weird. I didn't have to play 3. I really like playing 3 because I really like having this card out to side out as like a side card, because you don't necessarily want to get rid of this card because this card's good in the mid game to put tank on like your late units hitting a battlefield and also cycle itself. But you don't want to play too many of them post game because there's just more impactful cards. So I decided to play with 3. This could change, could be a different ratio, but for now I felt really good about 3. And then to round off our units, we've got 3 Fae Folks and 2 Watcher. I know this ratio can kind of dance around a little bit. I wanted to play 3 Fae Folk, 2 Watcher because again, I'm kind of dedicated to holding my battlefield, and I really wanted my Accelerate units to be able to be played on top of, like, not just playing from Accelerate, but also playing them onto your battlefield. And you just kind of want to play this card as like a way to clear board or just take double battlefield points. So Tasty Fae Folk made a lot of sense. And obviously the Death Knell is really good because sometimes you might have to minus early if you need to charm, if you need to smoke screen, if you need to minus something, a deflect unit or something like Yi or something. This helps offset that a little bit. The ratio could change a little bit. Maybe in the future I see myself playing 3 Watcher, 2 Fae Folk, but as it stands right now, it felt really good to have the extra Accelerate units that also had the chance at drawing cards. That goes for the units. We'll start going into the spells. So 2 Charm. This card honestly feels really good when you see it in the early and late game, but in the mid game it's kind of weird. I decided to play 2 instead of 3 just because of that. It feels really bad to clog up on this card. You'll rarely need like 2 in a turn to win a game, but you will often need maybe 1 to win a game. So I wanted to play 2 just so I could have more space for other cards, which I'll get into really quick. These ones are standard, 3 Unguard and 3 Stupefy. Not much to say about these. This card just replaces itself, gives a minus. This card gives +2. Even with like Raven Bloom and stuff like that, when you're holding with multiple bodies, Unguarded is really good, and Stupefy is also really good because they'll just give +1 on top of their might while Raven Bloom is on the battlefield. So for how you're trying to play the deck, and as long as you're concerned with holding the battlefield, this card basically gives +2 with a Raven Bloom, and so does this. So it feels really good to play those. 1 Retreat. This is a little weird. Retreat feels like a really good card when you're able to play it and get the unit back and offset the mana. But in a deck like this, where you really don't want to have to pick up your guys off of combat, you really don't want to have to play this multiple times. It really is here just so that maybe Watcher or Fae Folk can just like loop back to your hand, and you can play it next turn by offsetting the mana and also just accelerating a second time. But as far as a deck that wants to hold the battlefield is concerned, this card is really just situational, and I decided to cut down on it so that I had more space for other stuff.
If you had more of another card, would you replace that?
I think maybe if I could see myself cutting the Lecturing Yordle to put in the second one of this, because there were situations where second Retreat did come up, or needing to see the retreat at least once was more important than just like having only one for like a specific situation. But I don't know, I'd have to test a little bit more with like the ratios because I haven't quite figured it out. But for now, 1 Retreat felt good when I saw it. It won me a game once because I used it on 7 when my opponent thought that I didn't have Time Warp, and then I bounced up the Time Warp and then took a battlefield and took one. So there's situations like that, but like if you have to do mental gymnastics for situations I'm playing a multiple of a card, I feel like you can just cut down on it. And then more standard stuff. 3 Discipline. I don't think I have to talk about this card. This card is just insane, especially on Dreaming Tree. Draw 1 +2. Not much to say there. 3 Defies. This one is also self-explanatory. You really just want to have this card for the impactful times in the late game or the early game, where not defying a card early game would lose you the game on tempo, or late game where not using the Defy would lose you the game because of an impactful card. So you just want to have 3 of this card, even if you brick on it. And then while we're still on those, we'll go to Smokescreen. This card used to be 1 Rune Prison and 1 other card in the deck that is escaping me, but these cards used to be side, but I really wanted to play towards the Master Yi matchup, which I felt like there was a lot of, and there was. I ended up playing 2 of them as soon as the tournament started. So being forced to play into those matchups without this card is really tough, and it's really good into Annie as well. Any deck that just wants to take tempo back by clearing your board, which is just every deck, because you know on our leader, you really don't want your opponent to break the board, so they're just going to be spending the entire time trying to crack it open and sneak points on the way there. Smokescreen just kind of makes it so that you can trade off with their bigger units in the mid game. And if you don't need it in the matchup, like in Victor or stuff like that, you can just side it out. It's not too bad. And then we're playing 2 Find Your Center. Another card that could have been at 3, but you just don't find a lot of situations to play this card, as opposed to like a deck where Yi, where it's like sometimes you might miss a turn and you don't really have anything to do with your mana, so leaving mana up for Find Your Center or just using it is really good. In our deck, it's really not that great in the mid game, because a lot of the time when you're playing this in the mid game or the early game, it's in replacement of another unit. So you really only want to play this situationally and late game when your opponent's 3 points away from winning. But this card is still really good, and I don't think I would cut it. It's if you're missing a turn, or you're potentially like playing towards like a Watcher or like an accelerated Feyfolk play, being able to offset the mana either in the early game or just ramp yourself there in the mid game is really good. So I wanted to play this card, and it's really efficient late game. And then we played the 1 Wind Wall. I just wanted to have a card that kind of sat there for a Cathian Rain and Grand Stratagem, because those cards are really hard for our matchup, for our deck to break. Cathian Rain obviously just wipes your entire board. Even if you have Treferian War Camp, it's still really bad. And Grand Stratagem, like, there's really no way to play around Grand Stratagem, right? When they're pushing a bunch of units in that are all +5 on them. So having Windwall to kind of force your opponent to have like those Watcher plays, or like those big turn plays that are not revolving around their impactful spell, just helps really a lot to kind of swing those matchups, especially post game when you've kind of got like more cards that you can play and you're not really playing towards like Time Warp or like your other alternate win cons in your early game. So being able to keep the mana up and force them to have different options to beat you is the name of the game. Because if you just set your board up to lose to 1 Watcher or lose to 1 Stratagem and you don't have a way to deal with the other one, then you're probably going to lose the game, even if you do have other cards to potentially take the battlefield back. So this card is just really good at stabilizing those matchups. And then we've got a few more 1-ofs. 1 Foxfire. This card was really good early game. Honestly, this card overperformed specifically for the matchups that I played in. Mid-range Yis were pushing in their guys in battlefields and losing points early so that they couldn't stabilize. Kaisa players were getting pushed on Foxfire so that they couldn't get points, just like they do with Hextech Ray shooting your guys before you get onto a battlefield. Victor players hate seeing this card because Victor players just push all their units to potentially trade, and if they don't have Stratagem, they're just losing 2 to 3 bodies every time. So this card was really good. There's an argument for playing multiples, but this card is also very matchup specific. Like against Aurora Yi, it's really not going to do anything. Without Smokescreen against the mid-range decks, it's not going to do anything. So it just sits there as like a side out and a potential blowout card in game 1. And then 2 more cards, 1-ofs. We got Singularity. This card is another one of your late game cards on top of Watcher and Feyfolk. Obviously, it doesn't set up a body like Feyfolk and Watcher does, which is like the main claim to fame of those cards being played accelerated and being able to hold the battlefield. But having Singularity to take back boards, especially boards that are in your opponent's base, is really important. Because sometimes when you hold your battlefield and your opponent doesn't do anything, it's usually because they're setting up their board in the back. And usually when they have a turn to set up against Ahri, you're either setting up on Ahri or giving up the battlefield. And most of the time, you're holding the battlefield. So like having Singularity as an alternative late game play that kind of hits their mid-range and kills their guys in their base also felt really good. This card honestly could go up to 2. Maybe I side in the second one because I am only playing one of this as an impactful 1-of. But I think in Ahri, you're doing a lot of cycling in your deck. Like pretty much half of your deck and your interaction is going to be there to draw you cards or interact with Dreaming Tree to draw you cards. So playing one-ofs is not that terrible in this deck because you're very dedicated to drawing those cards and cycling. But this card specifically was very good, so maybe I would bump this card up to 2. And then last card, the Time Warp. I know people like to play 2 of this card because you really want to see it. Like I said before, this deck is very dedicated to drawing cards. You've got Stupefies, you've got Unguards, you've got everything in your deck that's going to draw you cards. So this card is a little situational because a lot of the time when you're playing Ahri, you are holding a battlefield. So the way that you are gaining points is different from a deck like Kai'Sa, where Kai'Sa can kind of sculpt the points how they want to because of them placing more units and pushing guys up. Time Warp is a little situational because a lot of the time, situations where you'd want to play this, where it's like stable enough to play this card, are after you've kind of like interacted with your opponent's board. So it's kind of weird where Time Warp in this deck is dependent on the other cards in your hand to help you push yourself there. So it's not like a deck where, like Kai'Sa, where you can potentially take like 1 turn, like 1 point, 1 turn, and like hold 2 points like another turn. Like you can kind of accelerate the point trade where putting up Time Warp and getting it off is really good. But in our deck, even though we're really good at playing Time Warp because we're holding for a long time, it's just really hard to commit yourself to playing towards that game plan. I just kind of played one of just so that I could potentially see it later. It did win me a few games. It did put me in a few situations where I was able to win, either by going from 7 to 8 as you normally do, or pushing up to a battlefield, going to 6, Time Warping to 7, and then counter clearing to 8. But yeah, whether or not I like 2 of this card remains to be seen. This card is probably the highest at going to 2 along with Singularity compared to the other decks, but that's the ratio I played for those in the main deck. Now we'll get into the side deck. So we'll talk about this card first. I played the 1 green Ahri. I hate this card. I thought this card was terrible. This card just costs 5 and a minus to be a 4 cost that basically just gets removed by everything. But this card could honestly be anything. It could be another blue Ahri, it could be a Singularity, it could be just any other impactful card that just wasn't this card. I didn't side this card in a single time the entire day. I sided in once and then I just couldn't play it, actually. So, I don't know. This card has its reasons. I understand the theory behind playing it, but I feel like you could just play without this card. Unchecked power. Like I said, I really didn't want to play into Yi because especially Aurora Yi was like really popular and mid-range Yi was just as popular for this event. So I wanted to play a card that was really good into those decks that didn't target. This card doesn't target, but it does minus you too. But I feel like the trade-off of wiping your opponent's entire board is usually worth it in those matchups. Especially even against like Set, against Teemo, like these cards can just be massive blowouts that beat your opponent's board. Sided it in a lot of times today, didn't really see it at all, but in theory it's really good. On theme with more anti-Yi hate, we've got the Mega Max. This card is mostly an anti-Acathian Rain tech actually because it's really good at throwing off the math with your opponent's Acathian Rains. But it's also very good against Yi because when Yi has to take out an 8 cost, with their 8 cost units, and your Ahri is pushing them down by 1, they need to have a plus to have a chance at killing it. And if I have a plus for this card, like another +2, then it doesn't trade the board as opposed to having like Fey Folk or like Watcher, which are at 7. This card, you can just jam this card against Yi, and then if you have at least 1 mana up, usually they're not going to break it open with like an Aurora hit Dead Bloom or a raw Dead Bloom onto the battlefield. So it's really good at forcing those kinds of trades, and also good, again, at trading out with Acathian Rain because you really just want to offset the high value that Kai'Sa gets from playing their big spells against you. So this card helped a lot. To Rune Prisons, this one is really good at holding the battlefield, again, against Yi. Very good against Annie potentially as well. Usually with Annie, it's not too great because you really want to kill their bodies instead of pushing them back, especially if it's a Vi. But against Vi specifically and like Darius and just not having the math, this card just kind of turns off the math for 1 battle because you get to turn off their guy, push it back. It could win you a game if you needed the extra turn. And it's really good against those big body decks that just don't care about how much plus you have or really want you to burn them. And then last but not least, we've got 2 Sprite Mothers. This card is dedicated for the Kai'Sa slot as well as for Victor. And just for other decks, having quality units that also have the chance at doubling your might at a battlefield is really good. Especially on War Camp. If I were to put War Camp as a going second stage, this would be the main card for it, because you can put War Camp down against Kai'Sa and then play Sprite Mother to go up to 8 with just one unit that costs you 4 and -1. So very powerful in that aspect. But I was just expecting a lot more Yi for the tournament, and it ended up becoming fruitful because I played against a lot of Brawly decks. So this card, very good against Kai'Sa. Would not ever take this card out, even the main or the side, but it decided to be in the side today, and it was really good. Shout outs to my boys who were able to get me the cards: Justin, Ali, you of course, and Brian and Joseph. Shout out Cardboard Cravings, giving the awesome Matt, giving the amazing hookups with the cards. Shout out 401 Games for hosting the event. Amazing locals. You guys should come check us out. So for set 2, I think Ahri might go on the shelf, but if I were to play set 2 again, I think those repeat cards that allow you to buff your guys for multiples are really good. Like Frigid Touch, I think it was called. I think that one minuses. Feral Strength, I think it is. I think I'd play those cards as well. But as far as set 2 is concerned, I gotta finish solving this set 1 deck for the how many weeks I've got left in this set before I worry about that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Of course, thanks guys.
Later.